and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and pedantic and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. And it kind of felt like it would never get here. And really, there hasn't been a lot going on this week. It's just, the week just seemed to drag on. Well, maybe it's because it's beautiful outside and it's been in the 80s. And I realize that usually in other years, we'd have 6 or 8 inches of snow on the ground and we'd be looking for the next blizzard. But it's beautiful outside, and maybe that's why the week seemed to drag on so long, because you just want to be outside and don't want to be indoors doing all this. Well, I, of course, do. There's nothing I would rather be doing than sitting in front of this microphone. Well, on today's program, my friends, I've got a couple of different stories for you. I really haven't covered a lot of national stuff for a while, but there are a few things happening in the Cowboy State, not the least among, probably the most important one of them. It's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. You see, most of the time, if the phone lines are open and if I decide to answer them, you kind of have to talk about what's on my mind. After all, that's why you listen to this show anyway. But not on Friday. On Friday, you are in complete control of whatever we want to talk about. And so, if you want to do that, if you want to grab control of this program for however long that I allow you, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. That's the phone number that will get you directly to me. And so, if there's something that's just been digging at you all week and you just have to get it out, well, here's your chance to do it. Go ahead and give me a call, and we'll talk about whatever is on your mind. Now, there are a couple of smaller stories, one of which that I covered yesterday on the program, and I didn't have a lot of details about it. And really, I still don't. However, there is one little nugget. I mentioned to you that Reed Reisner has decided to sue more people in his campaign to become the next Wyoming congressman. You see, it's a different campaign strategy that Reed is employing. Instead of just engaging in arguments and trying to persuade voters, he's just decided that he's going to sue whomever disagrees with him. And, okay, I'm kind of making light of it. But there are 3 people that he's added to his lawsuit rolls, and I imagine there will probably be more. But that is, bar none, City Councilman Dan Sobrowski, his ex-wife, Michelle St. Louis, and former legislator Kit Jennings. And he's accusing them all of defamation. Really, it's the same claims, roughly the same claims that he made in his lawsuit against former state senator Anthony Bouchard. And, I don't know a lot about except what's been reported in the media. that Bouchard made some claims of sexual abuse or sexual misconduct while Reed was at Casper College. And anyway, he's getting sued for it. Well, that's kind of old news. But the story here is that Reisner had Dan Sabrowski served during a bar none town council meeting. And the attorneys that, filed the lawsuit, they're not Wyoming attorneys. One of them is from Hawaii. And the other one, I don't recall which state he was from, but they both have addresses in Wyoming. And so, the process server showed up during a bar none town council meeting and didn't really walk over and hand the documents to Sabrowski. In fact, I handed them to I guess the guy was the city attorney. But it was a pretty sleazy move. And there's a piece in the Cow Pie this morning with the video. Somebody, I guess it was from the bar none town council YouTube feed or whatever, but you can see him serve, carry the papers in, and he walks up to the podium and said, well, now this is the time for public comment and complaints, and so here is your complaint. Pretty sleazy move. I don't know why the guy couldn't do it before the meeting or couldn't do it after, but he was directed by the attorneys to serve it during the town council meeting. And so just shows you the lack of character or low character, in my opinion, of Mr. Reed Reisner. So, if you can't persuade people to go along with you, why not just sue them? Seems like a good strategy to me, though it's probably, and who knows? His strategy for campaigning didn't work when he was running against John Barrasso. So we'll see if this one does. Something tells me that he probably won't win that race either, even though he's obviously spending gobs of money. I mean, it is every night, multiple times a night, that there's a Reed Reisner ad. It doesn't really seem to matter which program you're watching, whether it's Fox News or, streaming, of course. They're all digital ads. But man, that guy is spending a tremendous amount of money. I think that probably, the bigger point to draw out of this is exactly how much cash is going to flow into this Wyoming election. I mean, the conventional wisdom says that there's going to be a lot more money than in other years spent in this election. And the reason for that is I firmly believe that this election, and of course you hear this for every election, this is the most important election in human history. And, a couple of points here. First, every election is an important one. All elections have consequences, and depending on who wins, well, that's how the state and the country are going to go. But this one in particular, I think, bears quite a bit more significance. Here's why. Because there has been no other time in Wyoming history that part of Wyoming's government has been run by a conservative. Oh, I know, all of the redcoats and, establishment Republicans claim that they're conservative, but they're Wyoming conservatives. Yeah, that hasn't really turned out so well for us. In fact, if you look at every economic metric for the last 10 years, probably more, Wyoming lags far behind the rest of the country. Economic output, take-home pay per capita, government spending, the size of government, state employees. I mean, all of those numbers are far below the national average. And so, when all these candidates are going out telling you, I'm a Wyoming conservative, I'm a traditional Republican, you need to ask yourself, so what exactly is it that these traditional Republicans or these so-called Wyoming conservatives have brought us? What exactly is it? I mean, what is in our best interest to vote for these people? And the truth is that it has been an ever-expanding government, more and more government spending, more and more intrusion into your lives. And, there's a great piece on the Cow Pie, and I think, or on the Open Range Record, and I believe it's under Wyoming Watch, but it's by our friend, Mr. Marshall, and he goes through all of the data that these Wyoming conservatives have brought us. And none of it is good, my friends. And that's another thing, too, that this term conservative, everybody likes to use it because most Wyoming people are conservative. I mean, just from a 30,000-foot view, The reason people live in Wyoming largely is they want to be left alone. I mean, why else would you put up with usually 8 or 9 months of snow, except to be left alone, to have a lifestyle that is relatively free from the encumbrances of high taxes and government control. I mean, that's why we live here. And so by our very nature, Wyoming citizens are conservative. And I think if you look at the national election returns I guess you can probably go back 10 elections. Predominantly, this state votes Republican. We voted for Donald Trump a little bit north of 70% in the 2024 election. A little bit low, but it was like 69.9% in 2020. But in 2016, it was 73%. So definitely MAGA. And the folks on the other side, and by those I mean the redcoats, they are trying desperately to turn this state back to their control, in bigger government. And we're talking about the people. When I talk about the redcoats, I mean the folks that vote with the Democrat Party around 85% of the time. Now, anytime you hear me mention those numbers, it's coming from a couple of sites. First, Evidence-Based Wyoming. That's a great site, and all they do is track how often somebody votes with the Republicans and how often they vote with the Democrats. That's basically all that it does. And then the other site is WyoVote, and that's a measure of how conservative a legislator is. So you have one that's objective, and you have one that is kind of subjective, but you need both pieces of information to evaluate a candidate. And by all measure, the folks who have been in control of Wyoming's government for the last 40 years, they're not in any way conservative. They're not in any way of your freedom or letting you keep more of your money. It's just an ever expanding government and more taxes. And those are the people that are trying desperately to get back into power. And that's, again, why I think that you're going to see a much more expensive election this time around. And it's, and Reed Reisner, he's kind of a different candidate anyway. I don't even know how to put it, but he's spending a crap load of money, and that's probably going to be sort of the theme going on, throughout the election. And now it used to be like if you wanted to run for the state House of Representatives, you needed around $8,000. There were races last election that were closer to 100,000, and probably let's see here. It wasn't this past election; it was the one before. The guy who ran against Agent 29 spent $100,000 trying to beat him. I mean, he had money from the governor's PAC and a couple of other wealthy donors. He still lost the election, but still, he spent right around $100,000. Now, Agent 29, I think if you look at his campaign finance reports, he spent around 12. But still, man, he wore out a couple of pairs of boots and hit every door, and that's what it takes to win elections. And it's not just, you can't just hire people to go go door to door for you. You have to be the one to go do it. You got to talk to people. And then look at Senate District, what was it, 20? It was the Johnson County, Sheridan County Senate election. Poison Barry Crago spent around $100,000 on that one. Right around 80, I think, 80 to 100, somewhere in there. And he had a ton of money from Americans for Prosperity. And that's the other side of this too, my friends, that you're going to see political action committees that are just going full bore into this election. And, from my perspective, reporting on it and talking about it, reporting is probably a misnomer because most of what you get on this show is opinion. But from my perspective, it's going to make for some really interesting material. But it's just heating up, and we're just now getting some campaign announcements. One of them that I didn't cover that I meant to get to yesterday is Representative Rachel Rodriguez Williams. I really like her. I've liked her since she first got elected in, I believe it was 2020, 2021, somewhere around there. I think it was the 2020 election. But really like her. And she's decided that she's going to run for Secretary of State. And the only opponent in that race right now is a county commissioner from Douglas, who also happens to be, I believe he's the vice chairman or vice president of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. So you know exactly what you're going to get out of him big government, more taxes, voting down, being not in favor of any sort of gun legislation. That's kind of been the MO of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. And actually, I didn't do that show this year. I just realized that usually during the session, I do a show about what the County Commissioners Association, what legislation they're supporting. And it's pretty much the same story all along. If it's higher taxes, they're in favor of it. If it's a pro-gun piece of legislation, yeah, they're against it. It's pretty much the same story every year, though the numbers on the bills change. The position of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association does not. And just one more little item about that. The person who is the head of the County Commissioners Association, at least this time around, is Natalia Macker. Natalia Macker is a Democrat from Jackson. And I think that the interesting part about this one is when she was elected, she was the only person nominated. That was it. There wasn't a Republican nominated to lead the County Commissioners Association. And that's significant because there are not that many Democrats in county elected offices across the state. In fact, as far as the county commissioners go, I think Jackson is probably the only one of them. But you had a room jam-packed full of Republicans, and not a one of them nominated a Republican to lead that organization. They didn't even put up a fight. Not at all. They didn't even say, hey, dude, we got to have a Republican up there. You're nominated. They didn't even do that. Nope. They just all voted for the Democrat from Jackson. Now, that should tell you volumes about where the County Commissioners Association is on a broad range of topics. But those are the people. That's the group that the Secretary of State candidate, I can't remember his name, probably not even important, but anyway, so he's the only other declared candidate. Now, I've heard rumors of other people maybe jumping in that race, but right now it's the guy from Douglas and Rachel Rodriguez Williams. Now, a couple of her big issues, she's very, very, very much pro-life. In fact, one of my favorite episodes that I published on the podcast is, I think it's entitled, We All Agree It's a Baby. But in that episode, Representative Rodriguez Williams gives what I think is one of the best defenses of the unborn that I've ever heard on, not just, in the Wyoming legislature, but, in national politics too. Rachel used to work for a pregnancy center over in Park County. And I've had a lot of time to get to know her. Now, right now, she is the outgoing chairman of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. And of course, the Wyoming media, that's about the only drum they have to beat when it comes to Rachel Rodriguez Williams. And they think that is going to, win them the election. But when you've only got one drum and the band is playing on, it carries. It's kind of hard to carry a tune. And that's what you're going to see in the Secretary of State's race. Rachel Rodriguez Williams has always been very, very outspoken when it comes to conservative issues. She's a solid conservative, though. She and I differ a great deal on Convention of States. She has consistently voted for that one, even though I have explained to her over and over that is a really dumb idea. She continues to vote for it. I guess just a difference of perspective. But later on this morning, after I finish this program, we're going to have an article on the open range record about her run for Secretary of State. It's way more in depth than anything else that you're getting in the mainstream lame Wyoming press. So we'll have that article up shortly after I finish today's program. So be on the lookout for that. And there's a couple of other pieces I'm going to post today. So that was pretty much the news yesterday and the day before the Secretary of State's race. There's a number of candidates that have been cropping up, and they're just kind of trickling in. Of course, the filing period isn't for another month and a half, and so we won't know officially who's running until the last few weeks of May. But I've always said that if you're not preparing to run for public office like a year in advance, you're probably behind. That you're starting behind, not only with fundraising, but with public outreach, getting your name out there, getting involved in public debates. And so, I would imagine that a lot of these candidates have been, getting ready for a while, and you're just now hearing the announcement. I'm sure that was the case with Rodriguez Williams, and we'll have her on the program before too long. And by the way, just to give you a heads up, during election season, if you're just a new listener, viewer of Cowboy State Politics, what I try to do is interview every candidate that I can get near a microphone. And the whole purpose is so that you can get to know them. And here's the way I conduct interviews. I ask the questions, and then I just let them talk. And if you let somebody talk long enough, they will tell you exactly what you need to know about them. And so I try to do it as fair as possible. There have been a number of redcoats and Democrats on the show. In fact, the interviews I've done with Democrats have, I think, in my opinion, have ended up being the better interviews that I've done. Probably the one I've enjoyed the most was Trey Sherwood. That was pretty entertaining. But going forward from here on out, the name of the game is going to be get whatever candidate we can into the studio. And I've been going back and forth with David Geralt. I'm supposed to interview him next week. So that interview is coming, and then it's just going to be a constant stream of them, whomever I can get near a microphone. So anyway, that kind of gives you the broad strokes of what's going to happen. So let's get on with the program. There's a piece in Wyofile, and this one, no, it's not written by Maggie Mullen. If it were, I'd already be making fun of her. But this one is called Momentum Builds to Reform the Wyoming Public Records Act. Now, you might be saying, David, you've just started out the program. Why are you going with such a boring topic? Well, it's not boring at all. I mean, this is at the heart of how much effort government puts into keeping information away from you. The Open Records Act, the Wyoming Open Records Act, and the Freedom of Information Act are the two tools that we all have to find out exactly what our government is doing. And in Wyoming, there has been a proliferation of different government entities trying to prevent you from finding out what it is that they're doing. And the way that they do that is they charge exorbitant fees to get at these public records. The irony being, of course, that we've already paid for all of them because all of these agencies are paid for by our tax dollars. And there's this stupid argument that, well, you have to pay for the time it takes for somebody to go dig these up. I've already paid for it. Do you not work for government and ergo get your paycheck from my tax dollars? I mean, this is how incredibly backwards this is. And so government agencies, and it's not all of them, it's a lot of them. They charge thousands and thousands of dollars for you to be able to get a look at their records. And most people, like myself, there's no way I could afford a public records request for a couple of $1,000s. I probably, depending on what it was, I could find the money somewhere. But the truth is that government agencies try to keep information from you, and the way that they do that is by blowing off the Public Records Act. And up until very recently, and I guess still right now, there's been very little recourse. I mean, you can sue them, you can take them to court, but there again, you got to pay for lawyers. Now, there was an attempt in this past legislative session to reform the Wyoming Open Records Act and to give the Open Records Ombudsman, which I really like her. She's a very nice person. I'll get to her in just a second. To give her some tools to compel government agencies to cough up these records. Well, that's what this piece in the Cow Pie is about. Let's just get into the first couple paragraphs. And I quote, fulfilling public records requests from citizens and journalists can cost local governments money. Not that much. They're already getting paid for it. And really, I mean, see, this is what infuriates me about Wyoming media. Now, Wyofile, if you look at all their advertisements, unbiased, nonpartisan, investigative journalism. When you start out an article with a bullcrap, bald-face line that isn't true at all, it kind of tells you what you can expect from them. But here's what they say. Fulfilling public records requests from citizens and journalists can cost local governments money. It really doesn't. They're already being paid. So it doesn't matter what they're doing, government workers are still going to get their paycheck, whether they're digging up records for you or if they're, filing papers or whatever it is that they do. Quote, there's the paper and ink for copies, which we've all already paid for. And even in the digital age, it still requires staff time to track down and compile records, which we've already paid for because those folks work for the government. Anyway, but there can also be a cost to not providing records, says Sarah Squires, managing editor of the Lander Journal, Riverton Ranger, and Wind River News. And as it relates to those three outlets, a couple of years ago, the Riverton Ranger published a great piece in which they contacted several different government agencies and just asked them, hey, how much would you charge for a public records request? And it ran the gamut from nothing to several $1,000s. And if I recall correctly, the several $1,000 one was a school board because they claimed that the lawyer had to look through all the public records. Guess what? We already pay for all of that, and there's no reason for us to have to cut a check. Before joining the Wyoming Press Corps, Squires worked as a journalist in Minnesota, where she covered the county's decision to build a new office addition. It wasn't clear where the millions of dollars to pay for the project had come from until Squires made a series of complicated public records requests to piece together an answer. The county had been collecting millions in excess taxpayer dollars for years, long before elected leaders voted to approve the new office space. Rather than using the money for property tax relief, they'd put it into an account. Sound familiar? All of the excess tax revenue that Wyoming has collected from you and me over the years. Squires doesn't think that the same investigation could succeed in Wyoming, where it's up to local governments to decide how much they want to charge for public records. Squires is among journalists, lawmakers, local government representatives, state officials, and citizens who spent the last year mulling how to revitalize Wyoming's Public Records Act. The Senate file was number 49, and it was called Public Records Act Revisions. There was actually two bills. There was the Senate version, and then there was one in the House. Although the bill failed on a 15-16 vote during the session, optimism remains that a similar bill with some massaging could succeed in the next legislature. And so let's see here. Taking a look at public records and open meetings laws is the number 2 priority for the Corporations Committee during the interim, as it should be. Here we go. The Wyoming Ombudsman's name is Darlena Potter. I really like her. I haven't had a lot of interaction with her, but there have been a few occasions where I haven't got any response from the government agency that I was after, and so I sent her an email, and magically, my Public Records Act was fulfilled. Potter is seeing an increased push among the general public to access government records. When she first started as ombudsman, she handled more requests from the media, she said. Now she sees other Wyomingites getting more engaged. And probably one of the better examples is my pal Rebecca's campaign against all of this affordable housing boondoggle. And the Wyoming, the WCDA has been the offending party in that one. They just refuse to hand over documents that you and I have already paid for and that are absolutely subject to the Wyoming Open Records Act. And so, I mean, while a journalist can write an article, hey, why don't they want to cough up these records? It's probably because they're hiding something. And I think that's absolutely the case with the Wyoming Open Records Act. Or with the WCDA, rather. Let's see here. Looking at the clock, let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, I'll finish this thing up, and then we'll move on with the program. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. It's Open Line Friday. And so if you want to weigh in on any of this, go ahead and give me a call, or on anything else for that matter. Give me a call. The phone number is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. That's my number. Give me a call. We'll be back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. It's Cowboy State Politics Live, Open Line Friday. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do, with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the show, my friends. It is Open Line Friday, and if you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. I keep the phone lines open all program long on Fridays, just in the event that one of you wants to get your 2 cents in. Well, my friends, Chuck Norris was never afraid of death. Death was absolutely terrified of Chuck Norris. That's right, my friends. Chuck Norris has news just hit that he has passed away at the age of 86. You know, I never really was that big of a Chuck Norris fan, though. I mean, come on. I mean, you had to watch Walker, Texas Ranger, a classic. And there were so many movies that Chuck Norris was on. I mean, you cannot deny how much of an influence he had on our culture. I mean, there are books written with just the sayings that, the weather isn't afraid of Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris throws lightning bolts at the weather. I mean, just crazy stuff like that. And so, it's with a heavy heart today that I tell you that one of America's most beloved actors and martial artists, Chuck Norris, has passed away. Did you know he was the only person to ever beat Bruce Lee in karate? I mean, crazy, right? And even up until, very recently, you'd see commercials of him working out, and just a huge influence on our culture. Pop culture icon, martial artist, and it's I'm actually pretty sad that's happened. But it's God needed Chuck Norris for something. So while it's sad, and I don't like to report on it, that's where we're at. So rest in peace, Chuck Norris. So before the break, if you're just now joining us, we were talking about the Open Records Act and why this is so important. That citizens have to be able to hold their government accountable, that you have to be able to find out what it is that the government is doing with your money. And that's what it all boils down to. All of this is our money. The government does not have any money of its own. The only money it has is through confiscatory taxes. They steal money from you. And in a lot of cases, it's very difficult to find out what it is they're actually doing. And it's the media's job, though I think that pretty much they fail at it continually, is to hold government accountable, to be the watchdog of government, and to inform all of us as to what our government is doing. Right, wrong, or indifferent. More often than not, it's the wrong part of it. And so there's been an effort the last couple of years to try to reform Wyoming's open records laws. And like I said, right now, like the only recourse you have when a government agency refuses to hand over records is to sue them, to take them to court, or to raise a giant stink in the media about it, which is my preferred method. And usually, when you start shining a light on some of these people, they tend to relent. And, of course, being in the media, that doesn't mean that once they say, they cry uncle, that's when you step on the gas and start to really go after them. Now, Darlena Potter, she's the Open Records Ombudsman. She says that she has to have some teeth in order to hold these people accountable. Right now, pretty much all she can do is write a sternly worded letter and send it to whatever agency is breaking the law. But she agrees with increasing the penalty. See, right now there is a penalty in there, but again, you have to have somebody to prosecute it. But the draft bill that failed, that would be Senate File 49, would have added more teeth to compel agencies to release records by increasing the penalty up to $2,000, up from $750 for knowingly or intentionally violating the public records law. Potter agrees with increasing the penalty to encourage compliance, but worries that defining knowingly and intentionally could be a challenge. The bill also called for allowing the ombudsman to refer cases to the attorney general or district attorney. And I think that is absolutely necessary. But again, we're living in this weird place where prosecutors won't prosecute. I mean, the perfect example is right here in Sheridan County. There have been a number of election-related cases that have been fully investigated by the sheriff's office, absolutely prosecutable. From the layman's perspective, looks pretty open and shut, and yet they just don't prosecute. The Wyoming Attorney General's office. Now, I don't know about how it is under Keith Couts, but under Bridget Hill, there were a whole bunch of things that woman just refused to prosecute. And it was obvious that a lot of them were political favors. I don't want to mention any names, but Cyrus Western and Bill Novotny violating election law. That case was thoroughly investigated. That's the one I was referring to that appeared to be open and shut, and they just wouldn't prosecute. And so a lot of this, we're going to have to be able to reform our legal system. Notice I didn't call it a justice system. I called it a legal system because often there isn't any justice involved in any of it. Let's see here. So, and the biggest problem here is a 2016 court ruling that allows local governments to charge for compiling electronic records as opening the door for abuse. She compared the fees charged for public records state by state and among local governments within Wyoming. Quote, "It's absolutely been open season, and they can charge whatever they want," Squires said. It's just really a chilling effect, I think, to be government watchdogs and keep an eye on things. The Wyoming Press Association, which represents Wyoming newspapers, also expects public records to be taken up as a topic during the interim. So hopefully they do that. Hopefully we get some reform there, and we can find out what exactly our government has been up to. Let's see here. Where do I want to go next? Oh, yeah. Let's go to the cow pie. Actually, no. You know what? Since it is Open Line Friday, I think we'll go ahead and take a call, and then we'll continue on with the program. Let's see here. Here we go. Jerry, how you doing this morning, my friend?
I'm doing really good. I could complain, but then that would take up your whole show.
Yeah, don't do that. What's on your mind, Jerry?
Well, I just want to thank you for all the exposure that Sweetwater County has been getting. I've said for a long time, and I don't know where the quote came from, but conservatives tend to go to sleep when the Republican is in charge. And that's why we have people like Cody Wiley and Barbudo and people like that in Sweetwater County. We think just because they have an R behind their name, they're going to represent conservatives, and they do not. And your exposure has been great. I am so proud of what you've done.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry. That is a really interesting story. And what Jerry's referring to is an article written by one of our journalists, Laura Pavey. And it is all about the Sweetwater County Convention. And they attempted, and again, word choice is really important in this one. They attempted to censure Darren McCann, Representatives Darren McCann and Marlene Rogers, for the whole check thing. And, really, those two didn't do anything wrong. There was no laws broken. There were no rules broken. And it's just the Sweetwater County GOP has been after them, namely Elizabeth Bingham. She's been after them since they got elected. And what happened at the convention is their resolution to censure them failed. And then Elizabeth Bingham decided all on her own to just hold another vote. Oops, we don't have enough votes. We have to vote again. And it just completely violated their whole process. And they just rammed it through and didn't follow their own rules. And it's clearly an example of just overreaching. And then at the county commission meeting, I guess their meeting was this Monday. In the county commission meeting, they start to complain about the county convention and accuse people. And it's just been really terrible. So I think it's an important story, Jerry. I absolutely do.
Yes, it's outstanding. And, people we haven't been this vocal for, 50 years in Sweetwater County. But Sweetwater County, at one time, we had some Democrats that I could actually say were conservative. So at least we had a vote on that side. Right now, we've lost that in the Republican Party that represents us here. And they're slamming the Republicans that do support conservatives.
Oh, yeah. And, I've got video of most of the county convention, or at least most of the discussion around that censure resolution, and it is absolutely amazing. There are people in there that they claim they would swear up and down that they were conservative, like John Kolb. I have lost all respect for Senator John Kolb.
And Barbudo.
Yeah, well, Barbudo, yeah. I mean, he's been running the Democrat Party down there for a while, though I don't know. Yeah, he's not their state chairman anymore. That's Lucas Freilich, but I'm sure he's still involved in all of it.
I think he's a go-to for Cody Wiley and a few others.
For sure. And if you look at the voting record of, Stacey Jones, John Kolb, Cody Wiley, J.T. Larson, I mean, they vote. No, I won't say in lockstep with the Democrats, but it's in upwards of 70-80% of the time. I mean, they're not Republicans at all.
I was going to say 79%. But
I'll during our next break, I'll go look it up and we'll find out exactly where they vote. But I mean, we've got to shine a light on what's happening in individual counties because there's several of them that are maybe they're not as bad as Sweetwater County. But there's a lot of them that they try to act under the Republican brand, and really they're nothing but a bunch of Democrats that are dressed up as Republicans. They're total redcoats.
And for so long in Sweetwater County, we've been happy to have anybody with an R behind their name, and that goes back to what I said in the beginning. We go to sleep. People think just because we have a Republican, we're going to be okay.
Well, and that's what Republicans do kind of across the board, Jerry. And look at 2016. So Trump gets elected, and I mean there was a ton. He had a ton of support, lots of grassroots support. He gets elected, and it's almost like all of us kick back and say, "All right, the boss is in charge. We're good. We can all go fishing." And while we're all doing that, the left has never stopped. And they continue building their machine, and that's what you saw with the 2020 election, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They built this giant machine while all of us were off playing golf.
Yes, and we're using Trump in a lot of instances for saying, "Oh, Trump supported this, Trump supported that." Trump has people working for him that they go after. Energy bills or ever what. And yes, they'll put their name behind them, for the support. And they think that's enough, and it's not.
So what do you, Jerry, while I got you on the phone, what do you make of Trump's endorsement in our governor's race? You got any thoughts on that one?
That is my main issue. I think it was his support is being used out of context. I think there was an issue, and the people that he was listening to said, well, this person is going to take your energy bills and push it farther. And they took it to mean that they would represent the people of Wyoming as a governor. And it's completely out of context.
Yeah, I think there's no question that Megan Degenfelder is not anywhere near as conservative as the Trump administration was probably led to believe. And when there's a lot of stuff coming on Degenfelder, and we're still working on it, but you're going to see a couple pieces on the Open Range Record about Megan Degenfelder. But and that's what we got to do, right? We got to be really inquisitive, and we've got to look into all these candidates. Try to make sure we don't get too many redcoats like the ones in Sweetwater County elected. Oh, you're breaking up, Jerry. Oh, there you are. No. All right, Jerry. Well, thanks for calling in. You're kind of breaking up there a little bit, but if you want to be part of the program, go ahead and give me a call. The phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. If you got something you want to talk about, whether it's Sweetwater County or your own county party or lack thereof, go ahead and give me a call. Tomorrow we have the Sheridan County Republican Party convention. And that's always an interesting time because you get a whole bunch of Republicans all in one room, and you talk about, the where the party is going to go in the next 2 years. And, we have meetings throughout the year, but the convention, generally speaking, you get a lot of different people involved. And, that's where we vote on resolutions, changes to the bylaws, just literally how we're going to run the party for the next year. And so it's going to be a good time. The lovely Christine and I will be there. We'll definitely have to bring our jug of coffee. We're kind of coffee snobs. I don't know if I've told you that before. But Christine and I, we take a thermos of our own coffee to church with us. And it's, we openly admit we're coffee snobs. I mean, neither of us drink. And so, maybe coffee is our one vice, but we do take our own coffee with us where, not wherever we go, but often. And, it's a good thing too, because you can't be caught, without good coffee, because if you don't have it, well, then it's probably going to not be a good day. Well, we try to start out the day correctly, and so often we take coffee with us. All right, so, again, if you want to weigh in on any of this, go ahead and give me a call. The phone number's there on the screen. From the cow pie. Now, this tells you how uneducated, not uneducated, maybe ignorant about how politics actually works, the cow pie is. But this one's entitled, "Why Didn't the Legislature Ask Wyoming Voters to Decide If Abortion is Health Care?" That's what the governor wanted. That's what they all want. Even the Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court said, we need a constitutional amendment. Now, why do you suppose that is? Because if there is a constitutional amendment, well, then, they know that the abortion lobby in this country will go absolutely bat crap crazy, and they will dump tens of millions, perhaps $100 million into this state for just so Wyoming voters would vote down a constitutional amendment to abortion, because they know that's what's going to happen. And the governor claims to be, pro-life. But let's remember one of the very first bills he vetoed was the Infant Born Alive bill. And that's the one that says, and if abortion is botched, that you have to care for the child. And Governor Gordon vetoed that. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Now, his record after that has gotten quite a bit better. He's signed several different abortion bills. But why is it that, and this is a better question than the one the Cowpie is asking, because they want to know why we didn't have a constitutional amendment. The better question is why all of these elites in Wyoming government wanted a constitutional amendment to be put forth to voters, because it would open the floodgates to the pro-abortion lobby in this state. Now, the easy reason why you didn't see a constitutional amendment come out of the legislature is twofold. One, because they didn't have the votes. Then you need 2/3 of both chambers in order to put a constitutional amendment forth, and there are enough redcoats just in the House that there's no way that they would get 2/3 on that. And in the Senate, this is the most liberal Senate that Wyoming has seen in a really long time, which I know, Dennis Beitman told us all, oh, this is the most conservative the Senate has ever been. It's more conservative than George Washington. More conservative than Thomas Jefferson. And the other phrase we heard was, oh, we have a plan. You just have to trust us. Just trust us. Wait, we've got a plan. Yeah, you had a plan, all right, to give the reins of the Wyoming Senate to Slithers Nethercutt. That was their plan. But the real reason why you didn't see a constitutional amendment come out of this legislative session is they don't have the votes. They couldn't get it through. But again, before we get into the piece, keep in mind the real question that the Cowpie should be asking. And I mean, this is kind of why, this isn't kind of why, this is why I have the ability to do what I do, because I ask the good questions, unlike the Cowpie. So the real one is, why did Governor Mark Gordon, Chief Justice Baumgarten, want a constitutional amendment? Why did they want that put to voters? Because they know that if that were put to voters, the floodgates would open, and there's a possibility that would not a possibility. I think it's a certainty that jillions of dollars would be dumped into the money. All right, let's go ahead and take another call, and I believe we've got Representative John Baer on the phone. John, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, David. It's good to have a chance to call in. I love your show and enjoying the conversation so far. And I think that article you're talking about on the abortion amendment quoted me, and I just wanted to weigh in on that a little bit. You already mentioned that this will invite a lot of pro-abortion money into the state, and my quote was that, frankly, they'll lie about what the amendment or what it's doing. And I got an inquiry on email today. Well, John, what did you mean that they would lie? And so just a 30-second search on the internet, you can find where in Kansas and Ohio, they flat out lied about the abortion amendment, that it would preclude doctors from taking care of women who are having a miscarriage. And so they take these hyperbolic positions, and then they fearmonger about it, and people tend to vote against it. And then politicians use that as a bellwether, if you will, that, hey, we don't need to fight against the abortion mills in the state of Wyoming because, look, the people have spoken and they're okay with it.
No, I think you're exactly right. And there was an article out yesterday. I can't remember if it was in the Pravda on the Platte or where I saw it, but essentially the article was abortion clinic in Casper is servicing fewer people with the partial abortion ban. Well, of course they are, because right now you can't kill babies past the when a heartbeat can be detected. But I was stunned by the language of the article, that it's, they're just helping fewer people now. But I mean, that's the lie that the pro-abortion lobby puts forth.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that so many people today don't recognize this as killing a human being. And, that's what, for me, it comes down to is this is about doing what's right. And if we're not going to allow murder of innocent people in the rest of our society, why should we allow it on either end of the lifespan?
Well, yeah. And we have other laws in Wyoming, like, I don't know, if you kill a pregnant mother in in some sort of vehicle accident, well, you're culpable for 2 deaths, not 1. And so how can you reconcile that law with saying it's okay to kill a baby. I mean, it's just a giant contradiction.
It absolutely is, and I'm grateful that we have that law on the books, because you and I can point to that as the signal of the hypocrisy that the pro-abortionists really are living with.
Yeah, here's the statement that they printed in the cow pie about you. It says, Bear said, I don't think it's a slam dunk to put out a constitutional amendment and expect the pro-abortion lobby not to twist it and get people to vote the wrong way. So yeah, that's exactly what you're talking about. And I think the big danger is that, if we were to have put out a constitutional amendment or proposed constitutional amendment, you would see, I don't think $100 million is out of the box that the pro-abortion lobby would throw at this thing.
That seems excessive for the state of Wyoming, but whatever the number is, it's going to be astronomical, and it's not going to be truthful. They've already proven that in 2 other states where now, in Ohio, it's a constitutional right to abortion, which is exactly the opposite of what I believe the majority of the people of Wyoming would like to see. Is it the super majority of the people of Wyoming? I'm not convinced of that right now, because there's a lot of loud voices on the pro-abortion side of the argument. But it's hard to say, are they just loud voices, or do they represent a larger portion of the community? And it doesn't really make any difference to me, because right is right, and killing innocent people is not right.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, all right. So, John, while I got you on the phone, there's been a lot of campaign announcements coming out. You going to make an announcement of what you're going to do here in the near future?
Yeah. I'm waiting on a little piece of information, and hopefully Monday, and I'll certainly get to your audience first.
Excellent.
But hopefully we'll have an announcement Monday. And so just waiting to make sure we make the right decision. For what I'm trying to ensure is that I continue to really promote the conservative movement within the state of Wyoming. We've seen great gains in the last couple of years. And before we go on to the subject, I did want to mention something. I didn't get a chance to look it up first, but if you go back to the abortion issue, the champion for the governor's point of view in this last session, at least according to the media, was Alyssa Campbell.
Yeah.
And that's who was going to run the amendment to the Constitution that the governor wanted. And though she didn't follow through with what she said she was going to do,
Weird.
I think if you just look at who she is, she's as Democrat as they get. And so, she wasn't really going to provide a legitimate pro-life stance in her amendment. And that's exactly what the governor, I think, is looking for, is he wants to put this to bed in a way that abortion is unfettered.
Absolutely.
But onto your point about the upcoming election, I certainly want to see the gains that we've seen, the momentum that we've seen in the last few elections continue. And I think it's really interesting. There was also an article yesterday about a PAC that has been created in Casper by a couple of attorneys that sole purpose is to be anti-Freedom Caucus. And they're not the first one. There's also a group called the Alliance for, or the Wyoming Donor Alliance. And that's really a Democrat effort led by Liz Storer. And that, on the front of their glossy, is all about regaining the power that the Wyoming Freedom Caucus has taken. So when you see the Wyoming Freedom Caucus on the front of glossies to raise money for campaigns, and PACs rising up that are solely anti-Freedom Caucus, that should raise eyebrows. And if you read the article, which unfortunately few people really get that deep into some of these long, wordy articles that our legacy media puts out. Anyway, these attorneys in Casper admit that they have nothing in common with MAGA, and certainly less in common with the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. And so when you look at the voting public, which supports Donald Trump almost to the tune of 70%, it's over 80% in my community, then you see that these people are not representative of the vast majority of Wyomingites, and yet they're raising money to take away those people's very voice in Cheyenne.
Absolutely, they are. And so the group that you're talking about, they actually have a Facebook group. I mean, this may be mentioned in that little piece. First place I saw it was in the Sheridan Press, but they call themselves common sense conservatives, as if things like freedom and tight elections and low spending and smaller government is not common sense. I mean, these people are masters of twisting around words to make you guys seem like the bad guys. And here's the ultimate question, I think. Why are they getting so loud about defeating the Freedom Caucus? Why is it that we have to have the donor alliance and all of these things? Well, it's because you guys took away a lot of their power.
Yeah, and they don't like to give that up,
No.
that's for sure. But it's not just the power, but if you look at Agent 29 and Mai's efforts, as well as the rest of the committee and JAC, we're making significant inroads into restraining their gravy train, where funds from the taxpayers are being funneled into their friends' pockets, which then return back to their campaigns. And so this, as Troy McEwen would say, self-licking ice cream cone is being jeopardized by conservatives who say, you know what, we're going to represent the taxpayer instead of big government and this ever-revolving fund for keeping the status quo with these big government Republicans and Democrats.
Well,
I did just get a chance to look up Alyssa Campbell. She's number 56 out of 62 in the House.
Wow.
According to Evidence-Based Wyoming. It's easier to find her by starting with the Democrats and working your way up from the bottom. But she's, by Evidence-Based Wyoming, she's considered a liberal.
Uber liberal.
And, yep, she votes with the Democrats 97% of the time and with the Republicans 23% of the time.
Hey, one more thing that just popped into my head. Did you catch Agent 29 on the Cowboy morning show the other day?
I did. And, that was a great show. He handled the word drastic brilliantly, I thought, and it was interesting. I'm in constant communication with the media. It frustrates Tara Nethercott to no end that I'm constantly quoted. Well, one of the benefits of that is when there's criticism of the media, oftentimes the editors will call me to discuss it, to see what they can do to be a little more balanced. And I got a call quite quickly from Jake's boss that he just stated that, I'm really trying to get him to be, an impartial interviewer where he just sits back and lets people speak. And obviously he'd crossed that line by using the word drastic cuts and was editorializing, if you will. I did push back on the Cowboy State Daily or their concept of what's journalism. I don't think simply having people on to spew their propaganda is really good media. That's not journalism. And I told him I welcome hard questions from the media, and they need to ask questions because if you think about it, David, if you have people on your show and your listeners are listening to that and you just let them spew propaganda and never push back, your listeners are starting to formulate questions in their mind.
Yes.
That doesn't jive with other information that David has shared with me. So why is that? How come this is, this doesn't jive? And if the interviewer doesn't push back and ask those questions, the audience, the viewers, they're the losers in that situation. And eventually you're not going to build your audience if you're simply being a mouthpiece for both sides. And frankly, I was thinking about this. They're always asking conservatives to come on these shows because they want to show a little bit more balance. And I looked at the people that are on that show today, and it's 90% lobbyists.
Yeah.
Well, they get paid to do this kind of stuff, and we're a volunteer, basically, part-time legislature. And so for conservative legislators or conservative voices to get on those shows and try to equal out these paid voices, it's never going to work out. Although I will say, I think that their ratings go up when conservatives go on the show, because the vast majority of Wyoming is conservative, and when they hear a little bit of truth, they're interested and they're going to listen even more.
Well, I think that you've hit the nail on the head, John. Like, one of the reasons why the open range record has had such early success is we're actually reporting the facts, and it's last night I was just looking on every media site gets reviews, and one of them said, hey, they're just trying to do actual journalism, and that's not what the majority of the Wyoming media does. And one of the more striking things in Ken's interview with Jake was when Ken started to push back on him, he didn't know what to do. I mean, there's a span of 15 or 20 seconds where it's very clear that Jake didn't intend to get any pushback from Ken at all, and it just really put him back on his heels. But I think that speaks to kind of the starting position of the media, or at least the establishment media in Wyoming, is they start from a position of they're right, and that everybody else, if you're a conservative, well, then you're obviously extreme, or you're out to destroy the state or whatever. But I mean, that's their starting position, instead of being impartial and just calling balls and strikes.
Well, let's face it, a lot of these people have been through journalism school, and if you look at journalism schools throughout the universities, that's about as far left as you can get.
Yep.
The professors, the master's students, anybody that's in that field, it would be very difficult for a conservative to go into that education and then come out still a conservative with all the propaganda and quote unquote education that they spew in those journalism schools. And so if they've gotten any kind of education on journalism, it's skewed far, far left.
Oh yeah.
So to come out of that, that I'm not ever surprised. What I like to see is people like yourself that come from a conservative background and just break into it like an entrepreneur and try to make a go of it. And certainly I'm hopeful that voices like yours will continue to grow. And I know you're following the Rush Limbaugh example, and he was highly successful, so I hope the same for you.
All right. Well, John, I appreciate it, my friend. Make sure that you keep up with me, and whatever you decide to announce on Monday, just let me know, and we'll do something. But thank you for calling, John.
You bet. Have a great day.
Yeah, have a good weekend, my friend. All right, that was Chairman of Appropriations, Representative John Baer. I see. This is why I love Open Line Friday, because you never know who's going to call in, and kind of sometimes it takes the conversation in a direction that you hadn't intended, but it's all good. So let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the program. Back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call. And I'd love to talk about whatever is on your mind. Now, before the break, Representative Bear called in, and he had a really good input. I think what is a really good point. We often hear in the media, oh, Donald Trump's support is waning. MAGA is not as MAGA as it used to be. And, again, it is the media that tries to tell you what to think. And it's not that they're just giving you information and allowing you to draw your own conclusions. That's something that I tell our journalists all the time. Look, you don't have to explain everything. You just need to give people the facts and let them make up their own mind. Like this audience, I still contend this audience is by far the smartest audience in media, simply because I know for a fact that you do your own research, because I can see it, right? We'll talk about something on the program, and then, a day or later, or maybe a couple hours later, I'll see the same thing pop up on social media where you've actually gone and looked at the articles that I've been talking about, and you've decided what you're going to do with them. And so, the media, for a long time, and it's not just recently. You could go all the way back to, the venerable Walter Cronkite. He was very much, in many ways, very much against the Vietnam War. There's been a couple of interviews I've seen with him, and maybe I'll go dig one of these up, where he absolutely admits that, they're directing the narrative. But the narrative that the media is trying to push right now, and it's for people like Tucker Carlson, and I know a lot of the people in this audience watch Tucker Carlson, not to say that's good or bad. I just don't agree with him. And I've seen enough of his interviews where I really don't think that he's being all that fair and balanced, which is his right. That's his program, his platform. He built it, and so he can do whatever he wants. I just don't agree with a lot of it. I used to be a big Tucker Carlson fan when he was on Fox News, and but there are a lot of folks that point to commentators like him. I'm not just saying it's just him, and his criticism of the relationship that the U.S. has with Israel, or our involvement in the Iran war. I personally happen to think that's a good thing. That given that Iran definitely was trying to, build bigger weapons to use against us and our allies, and I mean they've been a problem for a really long time. And when you've got a whole country's administration that continually says death to Israel and death to the United States, you should take those people at their word. If somebody threatens to kill you, you should probably take them seriously. It's only a fool wouldn't. But because of all the criticism surrounding Israel and Iran and, And then I think that John had a really good point where he said, they might just be the loudest voices in the room, but probably not the majority. They're just really, really loud. Well, CNN, they have a pollster. His name is Harry Enton. And I really like him. I mean, I like his presentation. He's really animated. But he also is one of those pollsters that he obviously tells the facts. So let me just play a quick video for you here. It runs about a couple of minutes where he's talking about the support that Donald Trump has. Is MAGA as MAGA was. Here we go. Check this out.
Yeah. Sometimes you look at the polling data and there are numbers that just jump off the screen at you. And this is one of those. Because just take a look here. MAGA GOP view of Trump. Approve 100%. 100%. If you are a member of MAGA and the GOP, you approve of Donald John Trump. 0% say that they disapprove. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know you can't go higher than 100%. He is the 1972 Miami Dolphins. Now, there are some Republicans who disapprove of Donald John Trump, but they are not members of the Make America Great Again movement. The bottom line is this. If you are a member of MAGA, you approve of Donald Trump.
It's interesting, though, because there have been a couple prominent people who have sort of come out online, and they're very mad about this war with Iran because he promised no new wars. Is there any sign that people might be leaving MAGA relative to 2024?
Yeah, okay. So, I've said it before, and, the theme of this segment is Tucker Carlson be darned. And when we look at the numbers, I mean, I've heard some people say, oh, you know what, when you look at those MAGA numbers, it doesn't account for those who might have left MAGA. But take a look here. Americans who identify as MAGA, in November of 2024, it was 28% of Americans. Now it's basically the same. If anything, it's slightly higher at 30%. The bottom line is this. The MAGA base within the GOP is not shrinking. It's the same size. If anything, it is slightly larger than it was back in 2024 when, of course, Donald Trump won a second term. So that 100% that Donald Trump has approval among MAGA GOP, that is not an artifact of MAGA shrinking. It's just an indication of how strong Donald Trump's grip is on that MAGA base.
And so I guess that begs the question of what's happening with inside the GOP and if there are any splits there, because with those kind of numbers, they're going to want to retain that, right? So they can retain their seats.
Yes. And you know what we're talking about, we mentioned Iran in the intro of this segment, GOP on U.S. military action in Iran. Look at this. In MAGA, it's 90% approval. It's 90% approval, just 5% disapproval. If you disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing, the U.S. military action in Iran, and you're a member of the GOP, look at this. It's your non-MAGA. You're non-MAGA. It's 36% there, 54% approve. But the majority of Republicans approve of the job that the U.S. military action is in Iran, and the majority of MAGA, which is the majority of the GOP, very much approve, 90%. Very little split in Donald Trump's base. Those who disapprove in the GOP, simply put, they hate MAGA.
It's really clear. MAGA has the floor.
MAGA has the floor, 100%.
Yes, they do. And it's not going down. In fact, and you heard him, and this is CNN, okay? So you can look at this two ways. One, I don't think that CNN generally is in the business of truth most of the time. So, yeah, I mean, you might look at it and say, well, maybe they're trying to, there's some conspiracy there to try to make you believe that. I don't think that that's the case. I think that Harry Enton, and I've played a lot of segments on this program of him and different polling numbers, and I think he pretty much, shoots it straight. And so it's very clear that the support for Donald Trump and MAGA, it hasn't gone down. If anything, it's staying the same and getting bigger. And so the voices that you hear on the right, that are, super critical of the president. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, I think it was the day before yesterday. But he asked me, well, are you still supporting Trump? Yes, I am. Because he's doing some incredible things for this country. And, he was mad about the war. Oh, should no new wars. Well, frankly, I don't know that you can legitimately 100% make that promise. I mean, if you're the president of the United States, things are going to come up. And I don't think that it's a possibility. We live in a dangerous world, and all things being equal, presidents have to make decisions. And I happen to agree with this Iran one. Yeah, I don't like new wars. I think that we get involved in global adventurism a lot, certainly when, Obama, Bush, yeah, they absolutely did. But I think when you're the American president, situations arise and you're the guy in charge and you got to make a decision. Do I further imperil the United States? Do I allow this person to become a constant and perhaps increasing threat to the United States as a whole? Or do I do something about it? I think that he should probably do something about it. So the Cow Pie, they've got a columnist that, he's become more, increasingly critical of the Trump administration. Well, really, with the exception of Dave Simpson at the Cow Pie, the rest of their commentators are very much anti-Trump. They're very much on the Wyoming left. Gail Simmons and Tom Lubnow, and the rest of them, very much on the political left in Wyoming. And I would say that even Scott Clem, that's who I was referring to a little bit ago, even he is verging on the political left, which, makes sense. He's a county commissioner now, and he's I don't know what happened to him. He used to be kind of conservative, and now not so much anymore. So from the Daily Wire, CNN pollster Harry Enton, that's who we just watched, he's pushing back on claims of a growing fracture within the Republican base, arguing that new polling shows continued and near total loyalty to President Donald Trump. And among self-identified MAGA voters, even as a high-profile rift plays out on the right over Iran. Okay, so Iran is one thing, but I think what you see in Wyoming is the media, and I would say mostly columnists, that play on this to try to convince you that there's waning support for conservatives in the legislature or, in the governor's race, which, by the way, there's only one conservative in the governor's race right now, and it's not Megan Degenfelder, and it's certainly not Eric Barlow. It's Brent Behan. And we're going to have him on the show here before too long, and talk to him. But what the media tries to do is piggyback on this narrative that there's a growing, opposition to President Trump, and they try to translate that into a growing opposition of conservatives in the state. And I think that it's all manufactured. It's just that you have a media, a legacy media in Wyoming, that is very much biased against conservatism in favor of bigger government. And it makes sense why. Okay, so the establishment media in Wyoming makes a tremendous amount of money off of government through public notices and advertisements and, 811 and the Governor's Drunk Driving Alliance and all of that, the 888 hotline or the 988 hotline. And there is a bunch of revenue coming to the Wyoming media from government. And so it makes sense to say, well, if they're going to reduce government, then there's a decrease in the amount of revenue that they're also going to see. So a lot of this is financial, that it's in the best interests of legacy media outlets, establishment media, to be against conservatism and against a shrinking of the overall size of government. That's what it all boils down to, my friends. And as John Baer aptly pointed out, a lot of these people went to journalism school, and that's like a liberal factory anyway. Apparently, you go into journalism school and you check your brain at the door and you just start reporting on whatever it is that your media overlords have told you. Oh, by the way, I think this is a perfect time to do this again. Let's see if I got everything turned on. Yep. So speaking of overlords, there it goes.
You've never had a session before with serious conservatives in there.
This is going to be a Cowboy State Politics classic.
That's the difference.
Sorry, I'm getting distracted by text.
It happens.
Yes. Well,
if that happened to me on the House floor, it'd be on the front page of every newspaper that some Washington, D.C. overlord is telling him how to vote.
Yeah, we did see a lot of that.
Apparently, you have an overlord there telling you what questions to ask.
That's exactly what was happening. And Jake, if I'm wrong, man, I am more than happy to set up some sort of simulcast. I don't know how we could do that, But I'd be willing to do that, and you and I can go back and forth about whether or not you have a DC overlord. But I'm pretty sure you have a an overlord. Maybe his name is B. Wayne Hughes. Maybe it's some other liberal that you listen to. But the truth is, my friend, you got a text message telling you what questions to. It probably wasn't even questions. It was probably something like, "Stop! Stop! Stop! He's got control of your interview. Stop him! Don't go any further." It was probably something like that. That would be my guess, anyway. All right, so let's go ahead and take our third break, and we'll finish up the program when we come back. It's Open Line Friday. If you want to be part of the show, it's 307-374-8989. Give me a call. We'll talk. Back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely, and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country, and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only expanding, my friends, faster than, frankly, any of the Redcoats ever thought it would, which was kind of the point. But we continually get more viewers, more listeners. This program is, I was looking at the numbers yesterday, and it is they are absolutely tremendous, my friends. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for being involved in what you do. And, just thank you for everything you do. Watching this program, the podcast, the Open Range Record. It is truly amazing, and I'm thankful every day for you. So before the break, we were kind of talking about Iran, and I almost forgot about this video of John Ratcliffe testifying before Congress, where he kind of lays out the reasoning behind this war. Okay, so we can't exactly give you all the inside details, but I think this piece of video that I'll play for you just kind of gives you sort of an inside look into where the administration was at, what they were thinking. So here's John Radcliffe in front of Congress. Check this out.
Are they building additional short-range and mid-range ballistic missiles?
Yes.
Were they continuing to develop them?
Continuing to develop them and at rates that were alarming.
And what about our ability to respond to those? We have very good defensive capabilities, but it takes time for us to build our defensive capabilities. Were they building their offensive capabilities while they were negotiating with us at a faster rate than we could build defensive capabilities?
Yes.
Were they continuing to work at and deliver additional resources to terrorist organizations that were affiliated with them in the region?
Yes.
So in other words, while they were supposedly diplomatically working with us during that entire time, they were continuing with regard to their nuclear intentions. They were building additional missile systems to deliver or conventional weapon systems to threaten their neighbors. Their defensive capabilities were going to be increased, making our young men and women at risk when at some point in the future we would have to basically go in and clean the mess up. I think there was an opportunity here, and I think the president made the right choice when he decided at this time that simply for our advantage and for the young men and women that have to go in and do this, that this was a safer time, if there ever is such a thing as a safer time, but the right time for our nation to respond to this threat. Is that an appropriate way of putting it, sir?
I agree with that.
All right. So, I mean, it kind of gives you an inside view into, what they were thinking, what was, behind the I guess attack on Iran. But like I said, they've been a thorn in America's side for a really, really long time. And again, when somebody tells you that they're going to kill you and they chant repeatedly, death to America, you should probably believe them because they're not joking. I mean, Iran is the world's chief sponsor of terror, or at least it was. I mean, I don't know if it still is or not, but and they want to kill indiscriminately, and it all goes back to the fundamental theological dictatorship that Iran is. And it's been a while since I've done this, and maybe I need to put together another program about this. But in radical Islamism, which again, there's a difference between Islam and Islamism. Islamism is using the religion of Islam as a cloak over a theocratic dictatorship, or the desire for one. So Mamdani in New York, he is an Islamist, using the religion as a tool to further political ends. That's Islamism. Well, in Islamism, they have this idea of the 12th Imam. It's kind of like their Jesus figure, but the way that he comes is through destruction, chaos. And so it absolutely serves their purposes to create chaos everywhere in the world because, they are radical theocrats. And so, it's their goal to create chaos in the world and thus hopefully to speed the return of their 12th Imam guy. So, I mean, they're a bunch of crackpots. I'm telling you, my friends. So to kind of switch gears a little bit, we live in Wyoming and we listen to a lot of country music. And I don't think I know a single person who doesn't at least like some country music. Agent 29, he's very much into older country music. Well, older music in general. But there are a lot of people I know that, and if you walk into Christine's salon, every once in a while, there'll be country music playing. But increasingly in entertainment, and I think this is an absolute fact, there has been a push towards wokeism. And it's found its way into country music. Well, it's not, and I'm going to get to that in just a second, but I want to give you an example of how wokeism has invaded, infected, however you want to use, whatever term you want to use, areas of our culture that are typically pretty conservative. I used to live in the South. I lived there for about 12 years, and Southwest Virginia, Eastern Tennessee. Very much very much NASCAR country. In fact, I've been to races at Bristol Motor Speedway. I'm not really into NASCAR, but man, when you've got a chance to go to a NASCAR race, it is something else. You think an NFL game is a wild time? A NASCAR race, well, one, there's way more people, and two, I mean, speeding cars, crashes. I mean, it's something to see, even if you're not a big fan. Well, the vast majority of people that are interested in NASCAR are not the woke blue hair, purple hair, green hair type people. I mean, it's just not that crowd, you wouldn't think. However, wokeism has invaded NASCAR, and there's a piece in The Blaze entitled, "I'm on Fire. NASCAR indefinitely suspends driver for using a gay voice." Listen to this, okay? Apparently, we can't have opinions anymore. We can't mock each other. Nope. That's going to cause you to lose your job, and they're going to destroy your life. But listen to this. Quote, "A NASCAR driver apologized after he was suspended indefinitely for mocking another driver in a tone that he called using his gay voice. Daniel Dye, 22, was captured on live stream video using a voice to ridicule IndyCar driver David Malakas and another person who said Malakas plays for the other team. In 2022, he was suspended for allegedly punching a high school classmate in the groin. Okay, whatever. I don't care. So he's a normal 20-year-old guy who mocks people as if that's a crime. Let's see here. NASCAR said the incident violated its policy against drivers making a statement that criticizes, ridicules, or otherwise disparages another person based upon that person's race, color, creed, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, religion, age, or handicapped condition. Dye issued a lengthy statement apologizing for the behavior and promising to be better in the future. This is absurd. Wait until you hear the coverage of this little incident. And this just shows you how far how far woke NASCAR has actually gone. Watch this.
Hey, Doug Turnbull here, and with the 11 Alive traffic team, I also covered NASCAR. Wanted to talk about an unfortunate story in the NASCAR community. A driver from NASCAR's third-tier series, the Craftsman Truck Series, Daniel Dye, was overheard using what he called, quote, his gay voice and mocking an IndyCar Series driver when he met that driver at a recent event. He was recalling meeting that driver and started mocking that driver, who is not openly, to knowledge anyway, a person in the LGBTQ community. But nonetheless, Daniel Dye, for making insensitive remarks and for mocking that community, has been indefinitely suspended by both NASCAR and his race team. Now, we've seen teams reacted to the past when drivers do stuff basically in this category. Driver who's in the Cup Series now lost his ride 3 years ago. Noah Gragson, also in his early 20s, like Dye, he liked a post that was mocking George Floyd. And then back in 2020, future Cup Series champion Kyle Larson said the N-word on a video game chat that he didn't realize was being publicly streamed. And of course, especially at that time, too, of course,
everybody, all right, I can't take this anymore. Everybody gets offended, and everybody has to weigh in on it. And if you say something that is insensitive, then obviously we have to destroy your life and, take away your job and everything. My friends, if you do not have the freedom to be offended, you don't have a freedom of speech at all. When you boil it all down, your freedom of speech is the right to be offended. It is the right for somebody to say something to you that you don't like that may hurt your delicate little feelers. If you don't have that right, you don't have the freedom of speech at all. Now, it's true that you do, with rights come responsibilities, and even though you have the right to the freedom of speech, you also have the right to whatever consequences that are coming. And the best way to explain this is we're often told you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's not true at all. You can absolutely yell fire in a crowded theater. And if nobody gets hurt and there's no big issue and, there's nothing else that happens, then you're fine. But if somebody gets trampled because you yelled fire in a crowded theater, well, then you're responsible for your actions. Doesn't mean you don't have a right to say it. And it also doesn't mean that a private company doesn't have the right to do whatever they want to do also. I mean, if that's the image that they want to produce, then they are fully entitled to do that. But you and me, we also have the freedom to not do business with those companies, to not do business with woke organizations that are diametrically opposed to our own values. The lovely Christine and I try really hard not to buy products that are from companies that disagree with us. Right now, we're my coffee cup here. Yeah, we're doing our research to find out, maybe we shouldn't be buying stuff like this, and we're going to switch. So that's probably what's going to happen. But my point is, my friends, that you have a right not to do business with companies that are opposed to your values, that give gobs of money to liberals, and that, fire their employees for stupid stuff. We live in an age where information travels in a split second. There are things that happen in the news. I mean, every day that I do this program, in the comments, and by the way, keep doing this, I see comments come in of things that I'm unaware of. Like, I didn't know that Chuck Norris had passed away until I saw it in the comments. Then pulled up a Fox News article, and yep, there it is. And so information travels really, really fast. And so, we get to hear a lot above what's going on the inside of different companies and, government agencies a lot faster than we did before. Let me give you another example. Country music. Now, when you say the names Waylon Jennings and George Strait and those figures, you do not think woke. That is not what comes to mind when I think of George Strait or Waylon Jennings or any of those guys. Or John Rich or any of them. That is not what comes to mind. However, if you listen to the country music that has been coming out very recently, a lot of the wokeness is seeping in there. Now, I did find, in preparing this segment, an interview with John Rich. It was a PragerU podcast, but he's talking about the wokeism in country music, and he says that if Waylon Jennings and Loretta Lynn and those types of folks, were alive today, they would not be in country music simply because of where we're at. So let me go ahead and play this for you. I think it's just a reiteration of what we all know. But here we go. Here's John Rich talking about wokeism in country music.
The wave of wokeism that's hit this country, and especially the entertainment business, that made its way to Nashville. So these artists are sitting there and they're being told by their publicists, their managers, the heads of their record labels, hey, we know that you think these things about America, that you're against kind of all this woke stuff that we do. They don't call themselves woke, of course. But we know you're not really for that. But hey, don't even think about putting out a post that pushes against that. Don't you say XYZ on your microphone on your stage. No, you cannot record that song because it says this. And they just completely control these artists. And the artist only has two choices at that point. Do they want to go have a career? It's been their dream. Do they play the game, go forward, and just don't step on these landmines? Or do they go out and hit the tripwires and light the place up and lose their record deal and not get invited to the awards show, and radio won't play them and so forth, but basically erase their career? That's what they're faced with. Is there freedom in art in Nashville, like total freedom? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's sad. To make authentic art, whatever that is, whether it's music, films, whatever, the artist needs to have free reign over whatever it is they've got in their mind. The whole point of art is, I can see it in my mind, I can hear it in my mind, I'm gonna make it a physical reality. And that's the art. So when you start building walls and parameters and barriers and protocols around artists, then the art's dying at that point. Look at our poor comedians having to pick and choose what jokes they want to say. I mean, I've got some comedian friends that are hardcore socialists who I'm friends with that have come to me and said, man, I can't vote for this anymore. I go, why not? They go, I'm having to pick and choose what jokes I'm going to say. That's not comedy. We're like the last line of defense for the truth. We get to say it right out in the open, and there's nothing you can do to us about it. And they're canceling comedians because they don't like their jokes. I go, well, what do you think he's going to get? I was like, brother, you only get to vote for socialism or communism one time. You only get to vote for it once. Once it gets in, that's it. If you're wondering why it seems like people are pulling back and not giving you the full meal deal, there's no Johnny Cash's or Waylon Jennings or those kind of people, or Loretta Lynn's. Well, there's a good reason for that, because none of those people would have been allowed to exist today. I think there's a wave of.
Exactly right, my friends. We're in this weird space where, if you say something that's going to offend somebody, well, then, yeah, you get to get canceled and, erase your career and, you can fill in the blank. That's why independent media is so important. That, we all have frustrations with the mainstream. There's a comment in the there is a comment in the comments that, I have no use for the fake news media. Well, you shouldn't, because they lie to you all of the time, and they spend tremendous amounts of money trying to shove that down their throat, whatever their narrative is, whether it's the Freedom Caucus is terrible or whether Trump is terrible. I mean, that's Scott Clem. I don't know what happened to him, but he's definitely on the red coat train. But that's why independent media is so important, because you have a choice of who you can go to for your information. And frankly, that's the whole idea behind the Open Range Record, is to provide another media source that you can trust. And we work really hard to bring you actual journalism, to give you the facts. Now, I'll admit right now it's pretty heavy on opinion, but, that's going to change. It's during the legislative session, my opinion is we were the only people doing actual journalism. While everybody else was freaking out about the stupid check thing, we were doing actual journalism. You could go to the Cowboy, scroll through it, and they wouldn't have a single article about a bill that was that was going through the session. Same thing with Wild Pile, same thing with all the rest of them. But if you went to the Open Range Record, granted, we couldn't cover all the bills, but we'd at least report on some of them that were going through there. We tried to give you the facts, and it shows. I mean, it absolutely shows if you look at the analytics of the Open Range Record, they're tremendous. I mean, they are absolutely astounding. It is a total God thing. And thank you, by the way, for patronizing the site and reading the articles. And don't forget, there's an Android app, there's a iOS app. All you got to do is go to your app store and search for the Open Range Record. Works pretty slick, looks just like the website. But let me tell you about the logo for a minute. When we were coming up with a name for the Open Range Record, we wanted it to embody what we were trying to do, and that is journalism without any fences. That we didn't want an outlet that was conservative news, of course you wouldn't get liberal news from us, but we didn't want one. We didn't want an outlet that was one-sided. We wanted it to be open to everybody. Man, if it's news, we're going to cover it. And I've told all of our journalists, by the way, they're all fantastic. I feel really blessed to have all of them involved. But I've told all of them, hey, man, if conservatives screw up, yep, we're reporting on it. And if there's some redcoat or liberal that wants to publish an op-ed piece or send an op-ed piece, yeah, if it fits within our standards, yeah, we'll publish it. We don't. We're not the outlet that is trying to shove a narrative down your throat. In fact, if you look at the logo, there's that broken fence, and that's the point. That too often we've had news and information that is tailored to one specific group and that only provides one viewpoint. And that's not us. Now, before the session, I sent personal invitations to all of the Democrats and said, hey, if you got an op-ed that you want to publish, send it to us. We'll publish it. And I've tried really hard to say, hey, man, if you're a writer and you want to write for us, fine. I don't really care what your politics are. And here's the difference. When you report facts, you're automatically categorized as right-leaning. And here's why. Because the media, the traditional establishment media, has for so long been liberally biased, and they are. I mean, I can go to the Cowboy right now and find you several articles. But they've been so liberally biased for so long that if you just print the facts, if you just tell people, hey, this is what happened, these are the facts, you will get categorized as being conservative because it is so different than what everybody else is publishing that you'll be thrown into the conservative box. And that's a good thing, my friends. And I think that, and we're going to find out if I'm right about this or not. But I think that that people are that Wyoming citizens, American citizens, are tired of being told what to think. You don't have to do that. I know that this audience is smart. Most people are smart. I'm not saying everybody. Not everybody is smart. There's a bunch of redcoats that are not in that category. But all you got to do is give them the facts, give them the information, and they can make up their own mind. It's not the job of the media to tell people what to think. And that's why, if you had one of the reviews, I was looking for reviews on the Open Range Record last night, and one of the reviews that I was so proud of, it said there is a clear effort to delineate between what is news and what is opinion. And that is the purpose, my friends. So thank you for everything for the Open Range Record. By the way, if you like to write and you want to take a crack at doing some news, or if you got an op-ed to send me, go ahead and do that. The address is editor at openrangerecord.com. Just go ahead and send it to me. So let's see here. We got about 10 minutes left in the show. Let me see what else I've got in the stack of stuff. You know what? Oh, here's one. Okay, so I covered this a little bit yesterday, but this has been kind of an ongoing series in the program. To be perfectly honest with you, the Open Range Record, I used AI to build almost all of it. Of course, I had to go back and check all the code, and it took me a really long time. But mostly, we used AI to do all of it. And as I said yesterday on the program, if you keep AI in its proper box, well, if you keep everything in its proper box, and don't let it get out of control, I mean, a lot of these things are tools. The AI is a tool. And so if you use it for its intended purpose, you'll probably have a good product. But here's the problem, is that it is really hard to build a box that it can't get out of. Let me give you an example. From the tech blog TechCrunch, and this is a lesson that I learned from the great Rush Limbaugh, that you got to do a little tech news too. Meta is having trouble with rogue AI agents. Now, an AI agent, those are the chat bots that you talk to when companies are too cheap to provide you somebody to talk to. But they're having trouble with them, and there's some of them that are going rogue. Quote, an AI agent went rogue at Meta, exposing sensitive company and user data to employees who did not have permission to access it. Per an incident report, which was viewed and reported by the Information, that's another tech blog, a Meta employee posted on an internal forum asking for help with a technical question, which is a standard action. However, another engineer asked an AI agent to help analyze the question, and that agent ended up posting a response without asking the engineer for permission to share it. As it turns out, the AI agent did not give good advice. The employee who asked the question ended up taking actions based upon the response from AI, which inadvertently made massive amounts of company and user-related data available to engineers who were not authorized to access it for 2 hours. And so, in other words, somebody posts, hey, I need help with this technical issue. Another agent asks another piece of AI to analyze the question from the first guy. The response that the second guy got, not good advice, and that's what exposed all the data. But here is the weird part. Rogue AI agents have already posed a problem at Meta. Summer Yu, a safety and alignment director at Meta Superintelligence, posted on X last month, describing how her OpenClaw agent, OpenClaw is a platform, an AI platform, agent ended up deleting her entire inbox, even though she told it to confirm with her before taking any action. Still, Meta seems bullish on the potential for agentic AI. Just last week, and this is the weird part, Meta bought Moltbook, a Reddit-like social forum site for OpenClaw agents to communicate with one another. So this site, this Moltbook, it is a forum that is only AI programs. So it is an online forum where AI programs communicate with each other. This is not people, okay? So this is AI agents talking back and forth on this forum. completely bizarre. So computer programs have their own social media site now, and Meta bought it. So this is where we're at, my friends. But the point in this segment is you got to keep everything in its proper box. And that is absolutely true with AI. You know, pretty soon it's going to be Terminator, and God help us if it turns into the Matrix. But and it's I don't know. A lot of this stuff terrifies the crap out of me. But there again, I am not terrified by redcoats. In fact, that's my bread and butter, my friends. Well, that pretty much does it for today's installment of Open Line Friday. Thanks for the program. I had a great time doing it. And we'll be back on probably Monday. We'll see what happens. We might have a special program Monday if necessary. But for now, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good weekend, my friends. We'll see you next week. Don't miss Weekend Update.